Okay, my name is James Williams Jr. This is Kung Fu Havoc number 2, and this is the third video on the deep pockets. But it's not going to be so much about deep pockets. It's going to be more about deep pockets and retconning at the same time. So this is the third video. It wasn't going to be a third video, but I'm making it the third video because it's connected. So before I was interrupted and had to see who was trying to video chat me while I was filming, I was talking about how deep the pockets were of the following people: Charlotte Xavier, Tony Stark, Dwayne Taylor, Warren Worthington III, Elizabeth and Brian Braddock, Forge, the White Queen. Alright? And as I went into these things, I'm going in blind. So everything I tell you in other two videos is basically because I'm going in blind. I'm going in on my knowledge from the 80s and the 90s and the 70s. Because I was born in 73, I started reading between 77 and 75. Whenever the hell I turned 3 years old, I started reading comic books. But my first comics were DC comics. And then I found X-Men through Spider-Man. So after that, I never kind of went back to DC comics except for Green Lantern, Flash, and most definitely Batman, until they started doing things that I didn't like. And the same thing with why I stopped reading Marvel comics. I still love Marvel comics. I still check in on them, but I won't buy them except for anything from 2008 all the way back to the 90s and the 80s. Those are the only comics I'm going to read because in that genre, everything was going great, and then they weren't going so great, and so I stopped reading them. It's not that I don't support Marvel, I just didn't support the way they took my characters and just started killing them off or giving them babies that they didn't need by people who should have never been allowed to have babies with them. It's the same thing with like Generation X and all that. And I left off certain people in that other thing because in Generation X, the White Queen and Banshee had something going on, and I left Banshee off because Banshee comes from royalty, because him and Black Tom Cassidy are also rich, which is why I don't understand why Banshee had to be a cop, but it is what it is. Now, in the other videos, like I said, I did touch on the White Queen because she does have deep pockets. I touched on Dwayne Taylor because he has deep pockets. I touched on Forge because he has deep pockets. I touched on Elizabeth and Brian Braddock because they have deep pockets. I know you guys are getting tired of hearing that, but I'm going to keep saying it because I like saying deep pockets. No, I like the fact that I'm telling you these people have deep pockets. I also touched on some of the villains, which Emma Frost and the Strucker Twins kind of all fall into the Hellfire Club area, and they all have deep pockets. I left off Prince Namor and I left off King T'Challa because they are royalty, which means they have the deepest pockets, which totally disqualifies them for any of this shit that I talked about in the first two videos. Now, the thing is, I left off some of the villains because I don't remember most of their names. But during the run of my reads with let's go with the late 70s, 80s, and the 90s, and some of the timelines and things where they have given certain X-Men X amount of money. Renee St. Clair fell into that in one of the annuals where she was like a princess or something, which I would omit her, but in reality, Renee St. Clair comes from deep pockets. However, like Roberto Sunspot DaCosta, he also comes from deep pockets. So not all the X-Men who have come through the doors of the X-Mansion come from normal backgrounds. And so we're going to start with some of the X-Men, the New Mutants, and X-Factor, as well as Excalibur, who come from some deep pockets. Not normal people. So let me wipe out some of the normal people first. Alright? Meltdown, aka Boom Boom, aka Tabitha Smith, who comes from West Virginia. She's basically a homeless teenage runaway. Same thing with Rusty, same thing with Skids. I think Skids actually and Richter. Skids and Richter actually, I think they do have, they come from deep pockets, but they weren't satisfied with their home life for some reason, so they became teenage runaways. I'm not real sure on their background because I have forgotten it. When that whole Exterminator thing came around, the only person I remember was Meltdown because she was my favorite character. Yes, I said she was my favorite character. Little blonde Tabitha Smith was kicking everybody's ass. So I liked her, and I liked Leech and his brother and little Asian dude. They could build anything just like Forge and build all these ships. And kind of like the Power Pack family, they come from decent pockets, where someone like Renee St. Clair and Roberto in the New Mutants came from deep pockets. And that basically sent them to the X-Men Mansion to be babysit because they are mutants. Where if you look at someone like Danielle Moonstar, who's a Cheyenne Indian, who comes from a reservation and she's kind of poor, so her mutant power is to manifest your nightmares and make them into reality. It's a badass power to have. And before she became a Valkyrie, she was a new mutant. And then she became a Valkyrie, and then they brought her back in X-Force, but they didn't keep her long enough to enjoy her. So, you know, these are the kind of the things that kind of made me stop reading the comics, because they did the same thing with Karma. And at one time, it was New Mutants versus the New Mutants, where they were all of the New Mutants from a different universe into the 616, where the other New Mutants had died. But eventually, there was another thing like that before that even happened, where the New Mutants met their future selves and tried to save their futures by being told something, and that shit got cluster-fucked up. But anyway, the two New Mutants that I know for sure, they came from deep pockets, were Renee St. Clair and Roberto da Costa. Now, Sam Guthrie, he was a farm boy, so he didn't come from a bad place, they weren't exactly rich. And the same thing can be said about Karma, because she was from Vietnam, and she didn't come from a very rich family, she came from Vietnam. And then you have Magma, who didn't come from a very rich family, but her family wasn't as rich as Roberto, but her family also came from Brazil. Now, I'm sure all of that shit I just said was probably all retcon. But then you also have Doug, who came from, I guess, a middle-class family, because his family wasn't exactly rich. They were rich enough to afford the school, but, you know, they, I don't really know what the tuition is for the Mutant School of the Gifted, or the Xavier School for the Gifted at the time. But, you know, you had to pay tuition. It was private school, which also funded their uniforms and their money for the jets and the swimming pool and stuff like that. But, you know, let me go through the list of names just in case I missed someone. So you had Danielle Moonstar, Sam Guthrie, Magic, who was Ileana Rasputin, Kitty Pryde. Now, Kitty Pryde's double, and she came from a modern home. And the reason why Kitty Pryde is double, because she initially started off as an X-Man, and then they put her into the New Mutants, and then she did back and forth when she went from being Sprite to Shadowcat. But her parents' pockets weren't, like, exceptionally deep, but she wasn't exceptionally poor. She was richer than Sam, you know. Now, why did I put her there? Because she was initially downgraded from the X-Men to the New Mutants when she got her pet dragon Lockheed. So want to make sure I got that completely out in the open before we go too far on that. Now, Warlock came from an alien planet, so we know his pockets probably were not deep at all. And so I named him, and then Lila Chinley. Yeah, you can't call her a New Mutant, but you can't not call her a New Mutant, because most of the New Mutant adventures dealt with Lila Chinley. Okay? You can say that she was a rock star. But for the 13 New Mutants, the ones I named and the ones I didn't name, only Roberto and Renee came from upstanding pockets, or their parents kind of had deep pockets. And this is before the retcon, so before anybody tells me I'm wrong, this is like middle 80s, 90s, and 70s and stuff like that. Now, if you go into the X-Men house from there, you have Wolverine, because he has no memory up until whatever they did to all of a sudden now he's as rich as Xavier. So we're going to put him on the question mark list. You have Warren Worthington, who again was in the other video, so check him on. You have Jean Grey, check him on. You have Iceman, check him on, because their pockets weren't that low. Now you go into the low level pockets, would probably be Beast, and it would definitely be Cyclops and Havoc. But Havoc actually was adopted by a prominent family, so that kind of twisted that up a bit, where Cyclops and them, they only got to visit their parents of Corsair or whatever, but they didn't get to stay with them because something about Alaska and something. It's comic books, so let's just leave that there. And you have Aurora Monroe, aka Storm. We all know she was homeless and a thief under the guise being trained by the Shadow King to do the things that she done to get closer to Xavier. So that's kind of how that worked. And then you have John Proudstar, who is a Native American who had no money either. Alright, so now you go to Sean Cassidy, who's a police officer from Ireland, but also royalty. So put him under the question mark. And then, I don't know who I'm missing. Sunfire. Sunfire came from deep pockets because his father was a Japanese tycoon. Alright? Which, why he left the X-Men was to go back and run the family business because something had happened to his father. So Sunfire left the X-Men and went away. That's why you didn't see him after a certain comic. You didn't see him anymore because they took him out by making him go do the other thing. Rogue did not come from deep pockets. Dazzler did not come from deep pockets. Strong Guy, who was Dazzler's bodyguard before the retconning, did not come from deep pockets. Alright? Psylocke came from deep pockets. We already covered her. Jubilee did not come from deep pockets because she was a mall rat and they kind of all found each other. And then, what am I missing? Nightcrawler did not come from deep pockets because he was basically a circus phenomenon. And whoever the hell else I'm missing, because I can't remember who they were, besides Kitty Pryde, which we already named because she's going to be on both lists, didn't really come from deep pockets. Mimic didn't come from deep pockets. And Mimic, I guess, when Fox made the deal with the X-Men, became Morph. Alright? So when they had the cartoon and all that stuff, Morph was basically based on Mimic. And they kind of looked the same. Then, trying to figure out, who the hell am I missing? Polaris. Polaris kind of didn't come from deep pockets because you don't know how deep Magneto's pockets are, but she is Magneto's daughter. He had two daughters, which was Scarlet Witch and Polaris. Now, outside of that, you have to do a little bit more researching on that. And like I said, the only X-Men that came from really not good pockets was probably Cyclops, which is why he strived to be the best of the best of the very best. And I still don't like Cyclops to this day for him abandoning his wife and child to hunt down his old love of his life. Alright? Now, I'm not in Cyclops' shoes, so I can't say that I wouldn't do that. But at the same time, we can't say that he's not. But, you know, you deal with that stuff as you go on. Now, when you go to the Caliber side of the pond, Megan, I don't know where she came from, but she does not come from deep pockets. Cullen, Cersei, and a couple other people who come from a different world don't come from deep pockets in our world. And then, this professor, he kind of came from slightly deep pockets. And then, depending on where you want to go with Jamie Mordox, who has never officially been an X-Men, at least not the real Jamie Mordox, unless that's finally been retconned and they decided that he has been an X-Men. But we'll have to do a complete video on Mordox on a whole nother thing. But he also comes from money. Alright? Siren, who is Sean Cassidy's daughter, she kind of has deep pockets because they're from royalty. So when you weigh the pros and cons on this, before the retconning, a lot of people from the X-Men mansion come from deep pockets. The minority versus the majority, because a lot of the other people don't have deep pockets. But a certain amount of them have deep pockets. So I want to end this right there and go into a video of Mordox. Alright, this is Jess Williams Jr. Just 13 minutes of your life you can't get back. Be seeing ya.